Before that, the search for new cancer treatments in Southampton is getting a multi-million-pound boost. Cancer Research UK is investing £5.5 million over the next 5 years at the Southampton Clinical Trials Unit to run trials to test for new treatments. The charity sent us this interview with patient Ivan Simmons from Southsea, who took part in a study. Now, Ivan was diagnosed with cancer in 2012 after going to his GP with concerns about his health. Ivan was initially given standard treatment, but when it stopped working, he was invited to take part in the Cancer Research UK support trial at the University Hospital Southampton.
I kind of had in my mind that I thought there was a problem. So when they said, you've got cancer, you have to have something done, I was used to it. And I didn't worry about it. I just thought, well, just get on with it. They said, well, you really need brachytherapy. So I had brachytherapy, and it worked for quite a while. And then they said, look, it hasn't done what we wanted to do. Nature was taking me over, and the cancer was growing again, mainly in the prostate area, but there were some other little bits and pieces, and so that's when Dr. Crabb said to me, well, we've got a trial, are you up for it? And I said, yeah, of course I am, yeah. I want to survive, It's a trial where you take a drug 4 days a week, 3 days off, combined with chemo. Yeah, it worked for me, I'd say the chemo was tolerable, the side effects were tolerable. You know that a big trial in the end will prove whether the drugs and treatment were good. People will benefit from it, and you've got to keep on researching.
Professor Gareth Griffiths is the director of the Southampton Clinical Trials Unit, joins me on the show. Gareth, is it a clumsy question to ask, where's this £5.5 million of extra investment going to look? What's it going to target?
So what it would do is bring a number of staff within Southampton Clinical Trials Unit. And what those staff do is they work with doctors and patients to design the next generation of clinical trials. And we're looking at clinical trials from potentially promising drugs to show if they work, so that hopefully we can roll that out into the NHS for future patients, but also early diagnosis. So we're doing large studies looking at whether we can do simple blood tests or nasal swabs, a bit like what we did in the COVID pandemic, and detect cancer very, very early so we can increase the survival rate of patients.
Is cancer sort of generically quite similar across its spectrum, or is the complexity because it varies enormously?
It varies enormously. What we find in our clinical trials, we could give a very similar looking group of patients immunotherapy, and some do very well and others don't do so well. So what we actually do in our clinical trials is we collect and ask the patients if we could look at their samples, and then we look at those after the trial in the laboratories to look at the genetics to try and understand which patients benefit the most. And we get hundreds of thousands of data items on genetics. And I know, there's a debate about artificial intelligence, but certainly in science it does help, because what we can do is we can use artificial intelligence to look at hundreds and thousands of pieces of data across hundreds of thousands of patients that shows us patterns and gives us insights into which patients potentially benefit from which types of treatments.
Is there fundamentally a silver bullet that you are looking for, or does cancer not work like that? And I'm thinking of the word cure appearing.
Well, cure, what we know in the 1970s, about 1 in 4 patients survived their cancer, and there's been massive progress. Today, with Cancer Research UK funding, we now know 2 in 4 survive cancer. And as a community, we're working towards finding that within the next 20 years, 3 in 4 survive their cancer. What we're finding is cancer is quite sneaky. So you could treat it with a treatment, it starts working, and the cancer starts adapting. So what we're learning is that how do we define the combinations of the treatment? So if the first line of treatment doesn't work, we can find individualized treatments. And if you look back historically, what we used to do is when patients, used to come into their hospitals to be treated, they'll all get one type of drug. What we're moving towards is when a patient comes into hospital, that we can take a sample, send it off to the laboratory and work out exactly which type of treatment works for them. And that's where it's going to go going forward.
Extraordinary stuff. Lovely to have you on the show this morning. That's Professor Gareth Griffiths there, Director of the Southampton Clinical Trials Unit.